I think what Councillor Dick is saying is that the approval will be sought prior to the drawdown.
Yes.
But it's not specific on that.
I'll put the word prior in.
So we're getting it up on a stream. Are you seconding that? Am I hearing?
I think it would be helpful for Councillor Bell to put on the table here.
Sorry, that was a motion.
It's a motion. I'm asking for a second, but let's get it up on the board before we. So people can digest what's being said. Suggested.
So you wanting to micromanage, or you wanting to get it over the line in stages?
I'm not wanting to micromanage, but this is we're at a very critical point of the development.
It's news 3.
And I just don't believe it's responsible for us to give a blank check without having some form of accountability. I'll explain that. Yeah, that's right.
Well, if someone seconds it, then we can have an amendment.
All right.
So you wish to speak?
Okay. Now, in the normal course of things, I would not want an investment company to be put into a straitjacket, and I don't really believe it's doing that. But I believe that this project is it's at a critical phase with so many uncertainties, some of which may clarify themselves in the relatively short term. Some may take longer. Now, the project definitely needs support to carry on through to some form of fruition. But I just believe that in terms of that's council's ultimate responsibility and its fiduciary duty, that in this situation it's reasonable to ask the investment company to gain consent as it expends, as it has to expend these funds, certainly in the short term. I would not see this standing forever at all. But I just think at this point it's prudent. It makes sure that those who have the final accountability accept accountability and responsibility, and that's us. And what I would say to HBRC is that if this is passed, I would expect, or certainly hope, that every request in terms of a drawdown or an expenditure, if well justified, and that has been the case so far, would be given, that consent would be given.
Seconder, you wish to speak?
I'll reserve it right at the moment.
Other speakers?
If we speak to this, are we compromised in our ability to offer a further amendment?
Point of order.
Then I will offer my motion to amend.
Good.
So what's your amendment? 'Cause there doesn't seem to be any other people wanting to speak. So. Speak?
No, I'm reserving the right because...
Okay.
What's your microphone?
So my amendment would retain item 1 and substitute for all the rest. So I would have an item 2, receives the HBRC financing proposal and tables it until the 27 May HBRC meeting. Number 3, commissions a report from Deloitte to be completed by 20 May.
Can't hear you very well, Tom, sorry.
Commissions a report from Deloitte to be completed by 20 May, updating its analysis and advice pertaining to HBRC's further investment in the RWSS including the advisability of authorizing the interim borrowing proposed by HBRC. And then finally, number 4, commissions a legal opinion from HBRC counsel to be completed by 20th May regarding whether any legal exposure arises from authorizing construction-related expenditure prior to confirmation by HBRC that all conditions precedent have been fully satisfied. If that's seconded, I'll speak to it.
Sorry, seconded, councillor Graham. You want to speak?
By all accounts, the decision to come from the Board of Inquiry is going to be the critical factor in this process. We expect that to come in mid-May. We've already heard that SIL doesn't wish to take any risk in this regard, largely because of the indecision around that matter. We know that
Sorry, I don't want to stop you. Just for clarity, SIL meaning Crown Irrigation Investment Limited.
Yeah, SIL. And that given that mid-May decision, all parties might be considering legal action as a result, but the window for them to do so will close toward the end of June. And so it seems to me that from a timing standpoint, we'd be far better able to assess whether this money is going to be well and constructively spent if we knew what that lay of the land looked like at the time. That's one issue here. No conditions precedent have been met, and we're getting into a gray area here, it seems to me, per Councillor Barker's line of questioning earlier, as to what kind of expenditures begin to move us into effectively a construction mode, a pre-construction mode. Call it what you will, analytical. It's everything short of pouring concrete here, and people have raised whether or not we are even entitled to make a commitment of that sort when, as I say, literally no condition precedent has been met on the project at this point. A year ago, in May, we got a report from Deloitte which canvassed all the various issues, the financing, the investment structure, so forth. As you all will recall, it was a very hedged report. If you were to take the time to reread it, you would find that it was hedged in all the areas that are presently still cloudy and murky at the moment. But it made projections, it certified economic growth projections. We're now hearing there's no dairying, it's this and that. And so much has changed in that last year that we were in fact promised a further analysis. It's now a year later from Deloitte. It would seem timely for them to sit, as the rest of us are, wait for this mid-May decision and refresh us as to what issues, what sensitivities they regard as existing around this project before we proceed any further to spend money on it. So it seems to be not unreasonable to ask for a refresh of this as we were promised a year ago in May before we make a further commitment of any sort on this project. It can be delayed till May, even June, I would argue, without compromising the operational ability, the ongoing marketing effort, et cetera, to seek water user agreements and all of that. But I guess what it says to me is that we are stopping short of authorizing a multi-month prolongation of this project when we will have much greater clarity by May as to where this thing stands.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Graham.
Firstly, from my perspective, this is all about risk now. And I'm interested in the previous debate. It's $4 million. It's going to be on HBRC and all the machinations around that. But essentially, their only real asset is the port. So if the project doesn't go ahead, of course, that's where it'll end up, or it'll end up out of our balance sheet, the cash that we're holding for the dam project itself. So somewhere in there, it's going to fall back to us or one of our assets. And it's because it's all about risk. I'm really interested in that comment that we have enough cash to get to the end of June. So we have a bit of time here, because it's quite difficult for any of us around this table to be able to make a reasonable, on the information we have, a reasonable and sensible and prudent risk analysis. And that's why we had Deloitte's in the first place. I wasn't too impressed with their report, but they're clearly competent financial people, and they would be able to look at this from a risk analysis point of view and give us some advice based on their previous experience. Because if you think about the risks at the moment, we actually have 29% of the water past stage 2, which is essentially we're having a second visit. So, we're a long way down this track, and I understand the barriers that have been put up, but we would have budgeted for those at any rate. I don't think we can make that as an excuse. I agree with the hedging of farmers. Farmers, especially in Central, will hedge, and that's just really sensible, and I agree with that as a factor. And one of the things that's a positive is, which Deloitte would be able to look at, and we aren't able to look at, is the interested outside party, who I'm aware who it is. And that's a very exciting concept for Hawke's Bay, period, and especially for Central Hawke's Bay. So Deloitte would be able to take the positives plus the negatives into contention and give us their view. This is good financial risk going forward, or it isn't. So I think it would be irresponsible for us to make a decision based on the information we have today. You need to have some decent financial advice on this.
A question, Mr. Chairman. If this amendment is passed, that means that two reports would come to the Regional Council in May, and following those reports, some form of definitive decision would have to be made. My question is, given that it's probably well into May, even with a special council meeting, before there was any certainty as to additional funding for HBRC, would this not pose real difficulties in the sense that your existing funding only runs till 30th of June, and if you're going to cease expending at that stage, there are issues like staff employment and so on, and other matters, I suspect, that would have to be dealt with, and would there be enough time to do that? That's my question, and obviously the answer can only come from over there.
Well, it can, and normally I would say no, but I think you raised some pertinent points which I'm not sure whether the learned gentlemen at the front have even considered them or would know how to answer, but perhaps they could give us a view. And as I say, this is unusual, wouldn't normally do it. But
So are you asking me to speak?
I am asking you to speak.
I have to say I'm mildly irritated by the point of view that says we wouldn't have considered these matters. We're professional directors. And of course there are expenses after the 30th of June, and they do involve staff, and they would involve, in some cases, sending some staff back to council, but I'm not willing to talk in any more detail about that because they're employment-related matters. But it will be difficult to tidy everything away neatly at the 30th of June.
Thank you. Other speakers? Councillor Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to speak against this motion. We are talking about a borrowing facility which is actually a very low gearing. We are talking about circumstances that have been totally beyond control of either HBRC or HBRC in the delays that have occurred in this, and this is the cost of democracy. A lot has been talked about stranding a further $2 million of geotechnical investigations. We have already spent quite a considerable sum of money on investigations to get to here. It is intellectual property. This dam will go ahead at some stage. Whether it is started this year or next year, or whether it's 10 years or 20 years out from now, it will go ahead. I only have to look south to the Tasman district with the Lee Valley, and they've been 12 years in that, and they've finally put it on their books for this LTP. They have an estimate of cost only. It's nearly half the cost of our dam, and it will irrigate with no infrastructure. It will irrigate only 7,000 hectares, but they are desperate enough there to consider that as a feasible suggestion. The climate change says we're going to get drier and drier on the east coast. If this doesn't go ahead now, that intellectual property will be used at some stage and will have a value. And my question in risk analysis is the risk of actually not proceeding. If we delay this for a year, 2 years, 3 years, what will happen is the costs will go up for everybody, and it's that much longer before we will get a return on our investment. So we're taking risks ourselves in other directions by slowing the process even further. And therefore I cannot support any motion that actually puts a company in a position of not knowing that they can operate, that they have not the money to proceed to meet their requirements beyond days of getting a decision. And I think that is just a way of destroying all our work that has gone into this. So I cannot support this motion.
Other speakers?
Could I ask a question?
Oh,
Debate.
pushing your luck now, Councillor Barker.
And my question is there the possibility of amalgamating both motions? And I ask the question because I sense from Councillor Dick that he wants to be
No.
able to have
No.
progressive
No.
control over it.
Order. No, there's no opportunity to amalgamate. We either go with this or we go back to the substantive. Would you like to speak? Okay,
Yes, I will.
thank you.
Well, no, I just want to reiterate the point that we're in a conundrum here, and Councillor Graham has made the point very clearly that we have to act on good advice, and we've had advice from HBRC, who have a vested interest in this. Let's be clear about that. And what this council on occasions takes is independent advice to advise it. And this motion is strong in that it seeks independent advice as to the legality. We have gone to the public and said that we are not going to expend any money until, beyond a certain point, until we have the conditions precedent met. Clearly, we are now in a position where we're going to advance some work, there's expenditure of $2 million, before we have sign off on the conditions precedent. That is a concern to me, a big concern. Apart from the financial risk that involves it. The public have trusted our view. We've said we won't spend beyond this point, and we are now changing that on our public consultation. I would like to know whether we are acting in good faith, ultra vires, etc. about that. I'd like an independent report on that. As for the financial risk, I think there is a question that we have to ask here. And for that reason, I support the motion that's put forward by Councillor Belford and seconded by Councillor Graham. On the other hand, I also am attracted, a bit like a personal relationship, to Councillor Dick's motion, where he wants to be able to enable things to go, but in a progressive way, and have control over the $4 million. At the moment, the way the resolution is put on here, that the council approve the drawdown of $4 million, and the HBRC is simply to report to us after what it spent the money on. Well, there's no clear statement of purpose on what the money is to be spent for in this motion. No clear purpose at all. There's nothing tying the motion to the expenditure, and I think that's a weakness in the motion. So Councillor Dick, has got a motion which is prudent, cautious, and has some measure of control by the council, and I'm attracted to that very much.
I'll take an opportunity to speak against the amended motion. I'm struggling with the inference that this work has been done or will be done, or the spending will be done frivolously or in any other manner. We're at the crucial end of a very long journey. We need to give our company directors some certainty about their challenges, their issues as directors, their ability to run a company that is in fact in a positive stance, not facing liquidity issues. I think the level of expertise that we have, both in the form of directors and people advising those directors, is best on show. I'm a bit flummoxed by this attempt to stop or at least severely dent and slow the process, so I can't support the amended motion. Eventually, but is there no other speakers? Yes. Yeah. Right, a reply. Sorry, Councillor. Yeah, thank you.
The final sentence of the Deloitte advice that we received a year ago, when they expected that the close date was going to be pushed back to September 2014, was, we believe that a decision to extend the financial close date is sensible, provided that there is a reasonable expectation that the conditions precedent to financial close can be met within the extended time frame. And as I say, this followed all sorts of hedging of various aspects of the project. The target of my amendment is frankly the $2 million that is projected to be spent or proposed to be spent on the geotechnical work. The operating aspects of this and the potential close-up costs, if that's the scenario that plays out, those I'm sure will be accommodated. And I'd remind you that Director Scotland foreshadowed all of this in December, indicating that we would get in January a proposal for how such affairs were to be financed and anticipated and so forth, and we did not. So there are some crocodile tears, I guess, from HBRC in looking at this resolution. But
keep it seamless, Councillor.
It is not that that I'm raising anything fresh here that has not been put on the table repeatedly since at least December of last year, when the legal progression of this whole matter seemed to be getting increasingly clarified. So yes, we don't seem to have trouble finding monies in our budgets to do things here. I'm sure we can find close down monies if that's what the occasion requires. But the $2 million is a purely discretionary spend at this point to advance the project to meet a schedule that we should not be concerned about if we're not even close to meeting the conditions precedent for the project.
Thank you. Well, I'll put the motion in. All those in favour, please say aye. And against? No. Call for a division. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And against? The amended motion is lost, and we go back to the substantive motion, which we've had Councillor Dick as mover speak to. You reserved your right. Are you still reserving your right, Councillor Barker, to speak? Any other speakers? Councillor Hewitt, you indicated